the economy being the #1 issue facing the country, the sitting vice president generally reverted to talking points about a few of her policy proposals. Even Harris allies today are saying that she needs to talk more about what she will do for Americans if elected. Senator Bernie Sanders will be here in a second to talk more about the need for her to fill in some of those blanks. On the border, another vulnerable issue for Harris, she also dodged.
Would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
Okay, that wasn't the question. When asked how she would break through the Israel-Hamas war stalemate, Harris said this.
We need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
Okay, but again, how?
Was that literally the biggest shit show you've ever watched in your life if you tuned in and watched the presidential debate? It was for me. 62 years old, and I've never seen anything like that. But I've got the answers as to why it went down the way that it did. Hello, American patriots. Welcome. Welcome to the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. I appreciate it very, very much. Before we get into tonight's show, I'd like to say that all of us here in Louisiana did fairly well through the hurricane. Many of you may have tuned in and watched the 2 live reports I did down by Lake Pontchartrain and by the Chafunchi River. And my apologies for the satellite signal. I did not know at the time that it was chopping and breaking up, although I should have assumed that was going to happen due to the fact that there was a hurricane coming above my head, separating between me and the satellite. It wasn't until I got home and tuned into the Weather Channel and started watching that I saw, here they are with these multi-million-dollar satellite trucks, and they were having those issues of breaking up and choppiness. And I went, wow, wonder how mine did. So then I went back and watched my show and went, oh, geez. So even the Weather Channel was having issues doing that. And mine sure as hell did. It was really, really choppy. What I should have done, and now thinking about it in the future, I won't do something live if the weather's like that. I will just do a quick video, and then I will upload it for you guys to see. So that should have been the way that I did it, but hindsight's 2020, and here we are. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the debate, and then we're going to get into something tonight that is really bothering me. And I'm sure if you pay close attention to what I'm going to share with you, it should bother you too. And furthermore, we've got to get the word out about this to every voter out there, which means that you're going to have to share tonight's show on all your social media platforms with your family and friends, so they are 100% aware of the trajectory that we're heading down right now. And my friends, it's not good. In fact, it's outright scary. But first, let's talk about this debate. We have been watching for almost 4 years now Kamala Harris talking, whether it's to the press or whether it is to places that she's been sent to give speeches, that she is a babbling idiot and a word salad mess. I've shared many, many clips of her mess on my show. So as many other people. Anyone can go on any social media site and bring them up and watch them. So we were kind of looking forward to the debate because we knew what she was going to do. She's a babbling idiot. She has absolutely no way of being presidential. And then that didn't happen. All of a sudden, for the first time, we saw a woman that just snapped out of this craziness and was able to answer questions. And I mean, answer them like this. It was amazing. How do you go from being a babbling idiot to looking presidential? Now, James Carver, who I've interviewed on this show before, and I totally disagree 100% with his politics. We're 180 degrees from each other. He said something the day before the debate that once again I thought, there he goes, spewing his mouth with some bullshit. And then afterwards I went, I'll be damned. He was 100% correct. What he said was, Donald Trump doesn't realize it, but he's walking into a trap. And man, did he ever. She was able to get under his skin, and to the independent voters out there, or the people that are on the fence and don't know who to vote for, which I'm not quite sure how you can possibly be at that point in your life, but for those that are teeter-tottering, he came off as a grumpy old angry man that lives in your neighborhood, and if your kid happens to be kicking ball out in the front yard and the ball rolls in his yard, he runs out and starts yelling and screaming and hollering at the kid. You see, one thing Donald Trump doesn't possess is he doesn't possess being able to control his anger in his mouth when he's pissed off, which, by the way, is what got him elected the first time, because people like that. They like to see somebody that would fire back in the Democrats' face when they insulted us or insulted him. You insult Donald Trump comes at you times 1,000 like a freaking train. And that's what happened. You see, his handlers, and they all have handlers, doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, every one of them have people that help steer them, aren't capable of steering Donald Trump. They're not capable of saying, sir, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to not do. Because if he doesn't like that, you're fired. You're out the door. So my inside people, and we'll leave it at that, tell me that they're afraid to tell Donald Trump how they really feel or what he really needs to do or say or be aware of, because he doesn't want to listen to them. He wants to hear yes men and women. Now, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I'm not here to judge that. I'm just telling you that that's how it is with Donald Trump. We know that. We've come to expect that from him. But this debate was not the time to let that happen. So how was it freaking physically possible that a babbling word salad idiot upstaged Donald Trump? Now, I asked that in my community section, and many of you said, oh, no, I didn't see it that way, and Donald Trump did great. Now, look, he had some wonderful zingers. Oh, yeah, he did. I mean, he had me laughing. But it's not about me. The debate's not about me or you. You know who Donald Trump is, and you know who you're voting for, whether it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. That debate is for the people that are on the fence and for the independents. That's who mattered. And what they saw was a clear winner in this debate. And you can see that all over social media. Now, since being the presidential elect to run, or not presidential elect, but being the person when Joe Biden dropped out to take over his spot. She has not done any press conferences. Zero. Her team is smart. They should win a fucking Oscar for this. They're keeping her from being the babbling idiot she is. A word salad freak who can't carry on a conversation without laughing and saying shit that's totally irrelevant to the conversation. They're keeping her safe from that because they don't want the independents or the people that didn't know who the hell she was. They didn't even know she was the vice president, but are now coming out of the woodwork to pay attention. Oh, the first woman that could be president now. And she's black on top of that. Although she's not American black or African American black, she's not black at all. But we're not going to go into that. So they've kept her in the basement on purpose. She did sit down with CNN and do an interview that was scripted with Tim Waltz, Mr. Stolen Valor, Tampon Tim, or whatever you'd like to call him, the guy who let Minneapolis burn to the ground during the George Floyd riots and waited 3 days before finally calling in the National Guard because he didn't have a choice. It got that bad. And even then, she lied about a lot of different things. So how is it possible that all of a sudden, what we've watched taking place for almost 4 years, like a freaking light switch, was able to be on point, although lying, on point? Anyone who doesn't believe that Kamala Harris was given the questions in advance and her team drilled her on this is smoking Hunter Biden crack. Now, do I have any proof of that? Here we go. Breaking news. An ABC whistleblower has come out and released an affidavit claiming the Harris campaign was given the sample questions that were essentially the same questions that were given during the debate, as well as assured that Trump would be fact-checked and she would not be. James Carville was right. Donald Trump walked into a trap. Now, during Tuesday's presidential debate, just like when Trump was debating Biden a few months ago, during the last debate with Trump, Biden and Harris said something that military veterans picked up on, and anybody that's patriotic picked up on. Anybody pays attention to the freaking news picked up on. And that was that there are no U.S. soldiers deployed in overseas conflict zones under this current administration. Joe Biden said that just a few months ago in the debate against Trump, and Kamala Harris did it again during this debate. The most damning thing about this no merit statement is that the moderators knew it, and they didn't call her out. They didn't call her out on anything she said. They just did that to Trump. Furthermore, neither did Donald Trump. It's like he didn't even hear it. Kamala said, and I quote, And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who's in active duty combat zone in any war around the world. The first time in this century, end quote. That is a blatant bullshit lie. Donald Trump knew it and he said nothing. The moderators knew it and they said nothing. The independents and the Democrats, or people that don't know who the hell she was beforehand, believe that shit because nobody fact-checked it. The U.S. maintains currently nearly 1,000 plus troops on bases in Syria and another 2,500 in Iraq. And this is according to the U.S. Department of Defense, all of which are in combat zones conducting combat operations. In Syria, U.S. troops are stationed to help prevent resurgence of the Islamic State group. They play a similar role in Iraq, where they also help disrupt Iran's influence and supply lines to various militias. Major civil war hostilities in both Syria and Iraq have gradually eased, but both places are mired in low-level conflict. One example of how U.S. troops are in harm's way overseas, on the last day of August, a U.S. military-led raid in western Iraq killed at least 15 Islamic State operatives who fought back with numerous weapons, including grenades and explosive suicide belts. And 7 U.S. soldiers were injured during that operation. In January, 3 U.S. soldiers were killed and 40 more injured in nearby Jordan when the base they were on, close to the Syrian border, came under attack by Iranian-made drones. U.S. military personnel in Syria, Iraq, and Jordan serve as part of the global coalition that's known as Operation Inherent Resolve. It is a combat operation. The U.S. and Iraq are currently negotiating terms that could see several hundred or more U.S. troops leave Iraq as early as September of 2025, but not any sooner. The U.S. withdrew its remaining troops from Afghanistan in 2021, and we know how that turned out, with 13 American troops being killed. Meanwhile, since the outbreak of the war in Gaza, the Pentagon has sent what it's called defensive military capabilities. Thousands of U.S. troops, equipment, warships, fighter planes, bombers to the Middle East in anticipation of a possible Iranian attack on Israel, and as the Houthi rebels in Yemen have targeted international ships in the Red Sea, a commercial waterway. They are currently engaged in combat operations, striking and killing those terrorists. More broadly, as of 2023, there were about 170,000 American troops stationed outside the U.S. on upwards to 800 U.S. military bases, according to data from the Pentagon and David Vine, an expert in U.S. military at American University. In nearly a quarter century after U.S. launched its response to 9/11, the Pentagon continues to pursue military actions in the Middle East, Africa, and many more parts of the world than the American people realize. And all of this was reported in USA Today and many other news agencies. The data comes from the research by the Cost of War Project at Brown University Watson Institute. The findings covered the first 3 years of the Biden administration and showed the range of global spanning operations where U.S. troops have, sometimes in secret, sometimes engaged in direct combat, launched drone attacks, patrolled borders, gathered intelligence, and trained other nations' militaries and security forces, all of which are receiving extra income in their paychecks each month that's called combat pay, which is only allowed to service members that are serving in combat zones. I know. 4 different times in my military service, I received that pay. The moderators from CNN during the Trump-Biden debate knew this, yet said nothing. So did Donald Trump, but he didn't call Biden out on it. The ABC moderators during the Harris-Trump debate also knew this and said nothing, as did Trump. So why? Why is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris allowed to make such no-merit statements during debates and no one says you're full of shit and 100% wrong? That is my first takeaway. Then, a prominent pro-life group isn't happy with ABC News over its hosting of Tuesday's presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump. Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America, on Wednesday sent a letter to the ABC News president and the debate moderators and urged them to issue a correction and meet with abortion survivors over a viral moment where Davis fact-checked Trump. And that would be Lindsay Davis, the liberal moderator. The ABC News presidential debate featured network moderator Lindsay Davis attempting to debunk former President Trump's assertion that some states allow for the killing of an infant after birth. Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life American President Marjorie Danzerferser wrote in a letter that was obtained by Fox News Digital. During the debate, Trump referred to infamous comments that were made by former Virginia Democrat Governor Ralph Northam in 2019, but was probably fact-checked by Davis. At the time, that governor suggested that in those rare incidences of third trimester abortions, a baby could be born alive and discussions would ensure between physicians and the mother. The infant would be kept alive if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensure between the physician and the mother. And he said this in 2019. Trump was referencing that during the debate before this liberal bitch said it wasn't true. She said, there is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life Americans, claim the ABC moderator was incorrect and should correct the record. This is 100% inaccurate. Her statement tragically ignores the reality of babies who suffered and survived failed late-term abortions, but were denied basic medical care and left to die. We are writing to request a swift correction of Ms. Davis and ABC News. And it's undeniable that babies were born in this country after failed abortions, as the fact below demonstrates. She's continued. A correction from the network and the debate moderators is an important first step in acknowledging this fact. We also encourage ABC to meet with abortion survivors who are a living testament to the need for born alive protections. The pro-life advocate then added several things backing up the request for correction, including numerous examples of babies born alive after failed abortions. And the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimated that between 2003 and 2014, approximately 143 babies died after being born alive following the failed abortion. It also cited a report from the center-right outlet, The Dispatch from Minnesota, regarding 8 deaths among infants who survived abortion attempts during Tim Walz's tenure as governor. It also a fact that as U.S. Senator Kamala Harris voted against protection for babies born alive after failed abortions. And as a member of Congress, her running mate, Tim Walz, even issued a public apology for accidentally voting for said legislation after he previously voted against it. The Susan B. Anthony pro-life president requested an in-person meeting with ABC honchos to speak directly with abortion survivors. That's never going to happen, by the way. Numerous fact checks published after the debate slammed Trump for his remarks on abortion. Infanticide is illegal in every state, and Harris and Walz have never supported it, CBS News reported. NPR also cited a Kaiser Family Foundation report earlier this year that stated abortions after birth are illegal in all 50 states. At the debate, Harris dodged the question from Davis over whether she supports any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion. I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe versus Wade, Harris said. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That's not happening. A complete and utter lie. And they let her get away with it. Now, I'm done talking about the debate tonight. I could do a 5-hour show on that debate. There's so much that needs to be said, but I've only got an hour to do this show. And there's something way more important than that debate. And I hope that you listen very, very closely to what I'm about to share with you. And make sure when this show's over with and it goes up as a regular video, whether it's on Rumble or it's on X, formerly Twitter, or it's on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever you're watching me tonight, please share this because your lives depend on it, and so do theirs. A retired 4-star general recently warned that the United States is currently faced with the most challenging threat since World War II, and that a near-term major war could easily take place any day now. He is General, 4-star General Jake King. He's also now the senior strategic analyst, said that the United States is on a pathway to a third world war. The general's comments come aimed the war between Russia and Ukraine, the war between Israel and Hamas in the Middle East, and increased threats from China and North Korea. Former President, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces, Donald J. Trump, has warned several times over the past 3.5 years that the United States is heading into World War III territory because of the Biden-Harris administration. While General King said that he does not react to the comments of a political candidate because he doesn't want to influence American voters, he pointed to a recent commission on the National Defense Strategic Report, warning that World War III is possible. The commission's report suggested that the United States is facing the most serious and most challenging threat since World War II, and indicated that a near-term major war is about to happen. The commission highlighted Russia and China as the major powers confronting the United States and warned that the U.S. military lacks both the capabilities and the capacity required to be confined and a deter and prevent and combat against all of these countries, both of them at the same time. The general highlighted the current conflicts in Ukraine, the Middle East, and warned that China's aggressive behavior has increased dramatically. The general said that adversary nations significantly changed their behavior towards the United States after Donald Trump left and President Joe Biden was elected. What has fundamentally changed from one administration to the other is Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are now working together, collaborating, coordinating, and truly helping each other. And the fact that they perceive the United States as being weak and they're going to take advantage of it so they have been incentivized by their perception of us, he said. A recent commission report concluded that the United States has not experienced a period of time like this since World War II. As a result of it, it is possible the United States could find itself in a conflict with China at the same time Russia and Iran, as they up their game because they believe the United States can't, the four-star general warned. The U.S. would be challenged to handle the conflict with China, much less two others, and that would mean global war. Now, that being said, you ever played poker? Yeah, the card game, poker. Well, let's talk about poker because our lives are at stake in this current game. Ever since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Biden-Harris administration has insisted that its goal is to help Ukraine defend its territory and survive as a sovereign state. Any suggestion that the war could be taken into Russia has been regarded as dangerous and could lead to World War III and a nuclear holocaust. Ukrainian president has complained many, many times of the restraints that the Biden-Harris administration has placed on their war efforts, denouncing them as naive, illusions, a concept of so-called red lines regarding Russia. At the start of the conflict, Joe Biden set his administration's two goals. The first was to support Ukraine, but the second was to avoid World War III. He made that pretty clear. If forced to choose between the two, the U.S. would clearly choose the latter, he said. Why? Because Russian President Putin keeps drawing red lines and saying, if the U.S. does this or does that, then we will use nuclear weapons. Biden has been consistently cautious about the kinds of weapons it supplies to Ukraine because of Putin's threat of nuclear war. When long-range missiles were first supplied to Ukraine, which Russia said would be a red line, the Biden administration placed limits on how far they could be fired to keep Russia from launching nuclear weapons. Russia said that if they were fired into their country, they were going to use nuclear weapons. The Ukrainians have long complained that the caution of their most powerful allies means that they're being asked to fight with one hand tied behind their back. While Russia is free to strike deep inside Ukraine, but Ukraine is forbidden from punching back. In May of this year, Biden-Harris crossed that red line and gave permission for U.S. supplied weaponry to be used against targets inside of Russia. Russian President Putin drew another red line of the U.S. giving Ukrainian F-16 fighter jets, saying doing so would be a red line that would result in the use of nuclear weapons. Biden-Harris crossed that red line and gave Ukrainian F-16s. Biden-Harris know that Putin has publicly threatened to use nuclear weapons and that Russia has consistently practiced their use in military exercises since this war with Ukraine. In 2022, U.S. intelligence intercepted, picked up frequencies and sometimes detailed conversations between Russian military officials about going full nuclear. Biden-Harris obviously took Russia's public the threats and private chatter seriously enough that Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, to warn Russia of catastrophe consequences should it go nuclear. Use nuclear weapons on Ukraine, and we'll use them on you, which of course ends planet Earth, and we all die. Biden and Harris pointed to that warning by Sullivan to refute the idea that they simply folded in the face of Russian threats. Rather than respecting Russia's red lines, the U.S. and its allies have gradually tiptoed over them, testing how far Putin could be pushed through gradual escalation. But Biden and Harris do not believe that the last red line has been successfully crossed. Biden advisors continue to think that if Putin believes his regime was on the point of total defeat, the Russians could resort to the use of nuclear weapons. The Ukrainians continue to complain that their allies are scared of the idea of victory, which is what is causing these red lines to be crossed. Now comes even more threats from Russia and stupidity of Biden and Harris. Russia is running out of ammunition and arms, such as tanks, jets, naval ships, to conduct fighting this war. So they turn to North Korea, who also threats to wipe America off the map with nuclear weapons soon, and ask them to help by supplying weapons of war. North Korea agreed and gave them the weapons they asked for. But the worst thing about that was Biden and Harris did nothing to stop these shipments of weapons to Russia. Knowing damn good and well it was taking place, Putin went to North Korea and met with the North Korean dictator, and they shared what they were going to do. And our intelligence knew about the ships that were containing them and sending them over there. And when I say shipments, it was just that. They went from North Korea to Russia via a ship. And our military was ordered to stand down and not sink those ships. Then Russia reached out to Iran and asked them to supply long-range missiles so they could continue attacking deep into Ukraine. Iran agreed and gave them long-range missiles, while Biden and Harris made our military stand down and not sink those ships that are carrying those missiles to Russia. So Ukraine does what? They asked Biden and Harris to send them long-range missiles so they can strike deep into Russia. And Russia throws out their latest red line and says, if you give them those missiles and they use them to strike our capital of Moscow, we will have no choice but to use nuclear weapons to end this war once and for all. Another red line. And as of Monday, September 9th, and again just yesterday on 9/11, Biden and Harris have asked John Kirby and the State Department to openly talk with NATO to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. Bottom line, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are playing a game of poker with Russia. And the bet on this poker game is a nuclear holocaust that would end civilization. How many times does a wounded dog have to be backed into a corner and beat before he says, fuck it, and lashes out with every ounce of energy he has to attack and kill you? And not care if he dies because he can't take the beatings anymore. That's the Russian president. Furthermore, why in the world would Joe Biden and Kamala Harris play this game gambling on our lives? Are they stupid, ignorant, or the most incompetent humans on planet Earth? Why would Biden and Harris not be willing to sit down and have talks with the Russian president to find a solution to end this madness and senseless killing of so far over 11,500 innocent Iranian men, women, and children? Donald J. Trump is on record saying if he is elected president again in November, he will have Russia stop this war and pull all its forces back before he's sworn in on Inauguration Day. That's what negotiations are for. That's what real leadership looks and sounds like. Yet, if Kamala Harris is elected, she has made it very clear that she will never negotiate with Putin. She will continue supplying Ukraine with weapons and our taxpayer dollars. And she will stay the course until one of two things happen. There are no more Ukrainians to kill, and Russia wins. Or Russia makes good on their threat and uses nuclear weapons, which in return ends civilization. I never cared much for poker, mainly because I suck at cards and lost way too much money playing it, especially playing a game like poker. Guess I didn't have much of a poker face. But here we sit, with Biden and Harris doubling down and playing the most dangerous game of poker that's ever been played in the history of not just America, but this blue ball out in the universe that we live on. Every single human being in America that votes needs to see this video. And then do your own homework. Don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself. You know, the thing you don't do when CNN or MSNBC or the far left tell you something, you just believe it. I challenge you to look it up. And here we sit. Here we sit. You know, first few years that I was in the military was during the Cold War. Ronald Reagan was our president. And anybody that served in that time can tell you, go ask them. If you have a family member that served, many of you do, that we trained to fight a war with Russia that would ultimately end in a nuclear holocaust. And Ronald Reagan did something that was seriously the greatest thing that any president has ever done since Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. He brought the Cold War to an end. And every veteran that you talk to that served during the Cold War will tell you what a relief that was off our shoulders in the military to know that the Cold War was over and we weren't all going to die in a nuclear holocaust. Since Ronald Reagan, that's been the case. All the way up until Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took over. And they put us clearly 100% back into the Cold War, back into what could be the end of civilization once again. That should be enough to scare the shit out of every single human being. Now, I've got just two more things to cover tonight, but let me explain something to you about Kamala Harris and personally the worst thing that came out of the debate, which you didn't even hear during the debate, You heard it after the debate. Any of you want to guess what that was? Let me share it with you. The far left liberal wingnut by the name of Taylor Swift said that she's done her homework after the debate was over with, and she's voting for Kamala Harris. Now, I posted about that on social media, and many of you said, who the fuck cares, Doug, what Taylor Swift says? Who cares? I care. Anybody that pays attention to politics should care. You know why? Because she's got over 300 million followers on social media. 54% of them are right here in America. 45% of them are of voting age. And they worship her like a goddess. Like the young women worship Elvis Presley in the 50s, in the 60s. If if Taylor Swift tells them to go out in the street and take a shit, they're going to go do it. If she says eat it, they're going to eat it. That's how brain warped these far left liberal are. So when she says you got to get out and vote and save the country, and you're got to vote for her, they're not going to do their homework. They don't even know who the hell Kamala Harris was. Most of them, recent surveys that have been conducted, I don't have it in front of me right now, but so I'm not going to give you the exact numbers, but I believe it was 54% of the young vote, when polled, said they don't even know who she was until the news media started talking about the first woman and first black candidate. And they went, oh my God, we got to vote for her. They don't know anything about Kamala Harris. Nothing. They don't know anything about nuclear war. They don't know anything about her word saladness. They're clueless. Most of them have never voted in their damn life. They know nothing about politics. So when she says, I did the homework for you, go vote for this person, I guarantee you those little liberal freaks are going and signing up to vote. And that is election interference. And it's scary. That, to me, was the worst thing that came out of this debate. So if you think, who gives a shit what Taylor Swift says, you better think again. Because that one woman, or whatever you want to call her, has the ability to change this race drastically, no matter what Kamala Harris says or does. White House spokesman John Kirby, who I've called many, many times, and I'll say it once again, is as useless as biological male nipples, told staffers via email yesterday that there was no use in responding to veterans' concerns about the Biden administration Afghanistan withdrawal. He mistakenly also sent it to Fox News. The White House has faced years of criticism for the 2021 withdrawal, which was widely seen as a disastrous operation and a failure of leadership in Washington. Aimed at the third anniversary of the withdrawal, Kirby wrote in an email to his staffers yesterday that it was a waste of your time to chime in and talk to veterans about their opinions about the withdrawal, and accidentally included Fox News in that chain. Otherwise, you wouldn't know about it. Obviously, no use in responding, but a handful of vets all of one stripe, Kirby wrote in a reply all email chain with White House staffers and Fox News. Now, allow me to correct that bald-faced lie for a moment. All 775,000 plus veterans that served in the Afghanistan war and came home alive, with the exception of maybe 200 that were liberals, are speaking out about the catastrophe of that withdrawal. And not all are one rank, which he was meaning privates. Every rank from private to command sergeant majors, from second lieutenants to four-star generals, have spoken their minds about that clusterfuck. When pressed by Fox News why he sent the email, Kirby told the outlet he didn't realize that you were on that chain. The email thread was shared by Fox News. They had reached out to the White House about criticism for the 2021 withdrawal, which included quotes from veterans criticizing the operation. Kirby's reply came while he was traveling with President Joe Biden during a visit to New York on the anniversary of September 11th, 2001 attacks. The Afghanistan withdrawal was initially planned by the former Trump administration in 2020, but executed by the Biden administration in a disordered and abrupt fashion. A lack of planning and leadership and an incorrect prediction that the Taliban wouldn't seize the country so quickly created a chaotic situation for U.S. military forces on the ground that led to the deaths of 13 U.S. service members. Then the Taliban immediately seized control of Afghanistan, and in the withdrawal, on purpose, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris left behind all of our military equipment that fell into the hands of the terrorist organizations, to include Al-Qaeda. Roughly $7 billion worth of U.S. military equipment was left behind, all of which is currently in the hands of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, ready to be used against Americans. And that is aiding and abetting the enemy, which is treason 101 in my book. Despite widespread criticism, the Biden administration continues to defend the withdrawal as the correct policy choice. It has also laid the blame on the failed operation on Donald Trump, arguing that Trump had signed the original deal to withdraw, which means absolutely nothing. Biden was the president of the United States of America and the commander of our armed forces, the commander-in-chief, not Donald Trump. He could have changed anything about that withdrawal. To add insult to injury, no one inside the Biden administration has been fired or has resigned for their role in that disaster that took place in Afghanistan. Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut predicted that Americans will be shocked and appalled when lawmakers release their interim report on the assassination attempt of former President Trump and the security failures of those involved in protecting the GOP presidential nominee. Acting U.S. Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe provided senators with an update today on the investigation into the failed assassination in a closed-door meeting. I think the American people are going to be shocked, astonished, and appalled by what we will report to them about the failures of the Secret Service in this assassination attempt of the former president, Blumenthal said. But I think they also are to be appalled and astonished by the failure of the Department of Homeland Security to be more forthcoming, to be as candid and frank as it should be in terms for providing information. The senator didn't go into specifics about what he learned from today's meeting. Despite his statement, other lawmakers refused to comment on how the public may react to the report. It will be coming out shortly, and it'll only be an interim report because there's a lot more information that we need to find, he said. We hope that once this report comes out and we can get the additional information necessary to have a complete report of what happened, as well as steps of what we need to do in the future to make sure that this never happens again. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin said lawmakers want to make sure the public understands that the report will be done in a bipartisan fashion. He said there was some frustration voiced by Roe on Thursday. So he's making the comment to, provide more information, Johnson said. We're hoping to get this preliminary report out before this work period. So again, we're on pretty tight time constraints. But again, it's important that people realize we're dedicated to a bipartisan product. Democrats and Republicans on this committee both agree. The Secret Service is coming under intense scrutiny over the security and communication lapses preceding the July 13th shooting of Trump during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Assistant Director Michael Blake of the agency's Office of Protective Operations, who led the section in control of planning for protecting Trump, Vice President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and others, is ending his tenure on Friday, his 27th anniversary at the agency, because the Secret Service told him he either has to retire or resign. No one needs to be able to retire or resign for what took place. This was a blatant attempt to get Donald Trump killed because they got no other way to keep him out of the White House. But once again, not a single person, no matter how bad they screw the pooch, in this administration gets fired. No one. Share this video. It's going to be up as a regular video here in a matter of minutes. Everybody of voting age needs to watch the words that came out of my mouth tonight and then challenge them to fact check every word I just said. And when they do that, they'll realize that there is only one way to survive going forward. That is not voting for Kamala Harris. You had many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you very, very much. I've got a lot of stuff going on this weekend. I'm going to be out of town. So unless something breaks that's like massive, like nuclear weapons are fixing to get launched, I will not be doing anything about it as far as a show or any updates. Because I've just got too much going on that I've got to be attending that's out of state. Also just recently had a friend that I grew up with as a kid, going to school with. We graduated from high school together, that lost his life yesterday, lost his battle with cancer. And so I will be attending a funeral sometime next week. Not sure how that's going to affect the show, but as of right now, I'm planning on still doing the show on Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Central, as I always do. Folks, whatever you're going to be doing this weekend, please be safe. Please share this video. Like the channel. Like the video. And let your friends and family know about it. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families in our country. And if you do not know what angel families are, or blue and gold star families, well, I challenge you to look that up too, because this current administration is pissing on the graves of their loved ones, and that is unacceptable, and it has to stop. It has to stop in November. God bless you. Good night, and thank you for tuning in to the live broadcast.